Great. So hi, everyone. So this is the Mayan galactic signature or star sign series. And this is the third interview I'm having. And I'm so excited because I'm with one of my most dear, beloved kind of people that I know and who's walked a long journey with me already on the Mayan calendar. Tanja. And Tanja is a yellow seed. And a rhythmic seed, hey?
That's right.
And yeah, and we were just talking about Tanya's going through some interesting changes, as we all are, and we'll talk a little bit more about it. Kind of blue storm is quite strong, which is another signature. But we're talking about, this yellow seed, which is about, literally being a seed, holding all the potential of everything, of creation. And her surname that she's had some life changes and made some different choices, and going back to her, or talking about her kind of original so-called surname, which is Kirstein.
That's
and
right.
Kirsch being a berry, hey, in Germany,
Kirsch is a cherry.
A cherry, yes. Okay, so tell us a little bit about that.
All right, so a Kirstein is directly translated, so it's a German surname. And directly translated would actually be cherry pip, which is interesting because as a yellow seed, one of the most difficult things that I found is creating a sense of self or self-perception. And so, really trying to figure out and get a sense of who I am. And what is actually so interesting, Elizabeth, is just actually coming to me right now, is that so I was born, but my birth wasn't registered until I was 13 years old. So I didn't have a birth certificate. And my parents divorced when I was very, very young. So I grew up with my stepfather's surname. So I never actually have ever used my own surname. I've only ever used my stepfather's surname and then my married surname. And now, as I'm ending the kind of marriage partnership, I'm in a place of self-discovery, feeling more me than I ever have. And then really considering the surname that has actually been mine since birth, but that I've never used.
Amazing.
And it actually is so symbolic of being a seed because, a pip is what the seed is. It holds the potential of everything within itself, right? So I think the word is intelligy, that they say it's the full potential of everything that can be is all encompassed within the husk, and you have to break through in order to explore and discover that aspect of self. So
so beautiful how everything, and also our knowing, and the Mayans would call that you in real time and synchronicity, because look at the synchronicity and the timing of you at this time so-called finding or reclaiming your original name, which actually has there's so much information for you about your life path in this destiny. And it just makes me think, there's so much of these, what we're talking about as what the Mayans call the galactic signature or the star sign, is also, it's kind of like our imprint. They call it a signature. So it's like our signature that we're making in this life. And the signature is also really our name, isn't it? So you're bringing in the name. And Tanja and I went to Egypt together, came on one of our trips. And the Egyptians had this big thing about names. You would have your secular name, which is what everyone used. And then you had a secret name, which only the mother knew, which was, and it's all to do with sound, sacred sound. So that secret name only the mother knew and could use in a way because it was so sacred, and it could be misused because if it's not said with absolute purity and respect and all those beautiful things for the child, it could actually affect their being, as it were, because it's like sacred geometry. The name is sound, and it goes right to the core. So I love it. So you've just brought for me another aspect together, which is our names. So it's a beautiful illustration of what this galactic signature is. It's our name. It's our sacred name. And as we know, just for those, don't know much about the Mayan calendar, is the perspective that we're talking about, for example, to have the perspective today on Tanja, is her galactic perspective. So normally when we look at our star sign, our normal star sign, so Tanja in the normal astrology, what I call normal astrology, which is when you're standing on the earth looking up, and you feel actually quite small because, you know, you're just in your human form looking at the massive expanse of the heaven. And the astrology is taken from that perspective. And in that perspective, Tanja is a beautiful Taurian. You can see she's very beautiful. Taurians are always beautiful and, you know, almost got that bovine quality of Venus because it's governed by the planet Venus. But the Mayan is looking down exactly the 180 degrees opposite, from looking down from the stars, the galactic, down onto the human, and seeing that we're not just a human, we include the human, and it's very precious, but we are much more, we're massive energy. So in that perspective, it's saying Tanja in this lifetime has chosen to be a yellow rhythmic seed. And so, like you were saying, Tanja, it's the seed, it holds all the potential of, it has everything it requires to flower. Hey, so one of the keywords is also flowering, you know, for you to show how you can grow out of the seed, how we can start with that tiny, small seed, and out of it grows this massive flower. So talk a bit about that. Yeah, you have such beautiful awareness about the calendar. I always find it interesting to listen to.
For me, finding out what my galactic signature was a moment where I fell to my knees, and it was viscerally just something that I can tap into at any point. It was like a showering of knowing that I received. And the reason for that was, so it completely encompassed my my confusion and self-doubt that I'd been living with, you know, up until that point. Was suddenly like the missing link just clicked in, and I could understand myself as a whole. And
Yes.
And part of that is, you know, if I just visually go into, you know, what does it mean to be a seed? I see the seed in soil, and I have such a connection as a Taurian to the earth, right? So here I am in the soil, and at the time it felt like, you know, almost having to break out of a cocoon, which is similar again to the seed, right? The husk of the seed. And then the knowing that this feeling of being torn is so intrinsic to my signature, is that I have to break in order to explore. I have to break out of safety and comfort, right? And this absolute requirement to grow both up and down. So
beautiful for the roots as well. Hey, truly, that's so beautiful.
And if you think just in terms of the creation code, Elizabeth, is like if you were to imagine the blue storm, and what I found was suddenly I was in the eye of the storm. Once I had this information and it clicked in, it was like there the seed is, and if the soil can be the storm, right? The world, the exploration that we go through, I'm in the eye of the storm, and I have full understanding now of how to navigate both up and down, to root myself in deeply into the knowing and the love of the earth, and to receive the nurturing that I require in the soil in order to explore and to become so creative and grow upwards. And there is no stopping that. There's no end to the upward movement as long as I'm really, really rooted into the earth. And that was for me just such a prayer, such an answer to how I experience this world, and not to make that wrong.
Yes, beautiful. And you know the thing, so the challenge of the yellow seed is absolutely that, to stay in safety instead at the expense of growth, because it's so comfortable to be in that safety, but to actually push it. And I love this thing of almost the roots being, so you can stay safe, but you can actually push upward and then flower. So it becomes so much more than just the seed. It becomes a flower. The seed is really beautiful and amazing, but the flower is almost as magnificent, if not more magnificent, because the seed has given birth to it. So I love that image also of the roots, you know. And once again, we were just talking about also what we're going through as a collective, as humanity, is very much about this thing of us having to be out of our comfort zone. And so Tanja was talking about the blue storm. That's what I call creation codings. So it's like where she starts. She's a yellow seed as star sign, but when she creates, her first energy that she has to be in order to create as a creator is blue storm. And blue storm is, and actually interesting today is of the interview, of the chat stroke interview, is a blue storm day. It's a blue spectral storm. So the blue storm is about catalyzing, activating, and it's literally like being in a thunderstorm. You know, it's quite scary, but at the same time, there's immense power and energy and regeneration that occurs. And so the seed becomes, and I love your codings in the sense that with your yellow seed, you open it up with a blue storm, and therefore you have tremendous courage. And, you know, it's the contrast between the yellow seed that is maybe doesn't have so much courage because it likes being comfortable, which very much resonates with the Taurian as well. Interesting, you know, it's interesting how everyone has very different kind of connections.
Yeah.
And then the blue storm comes, no, you are not going to be in your comfort zone because you can flower. Because ultimately there's that growth, that experience of flowering and of growing upwards, because the yellow seed is in the mind system, is in the base chakra. So it's also anchoring, but at the same time with those roots, at the same time you're growing up, and there's so much expansion and there's so much higher awareness that can come in. So I just love the dynamic of how you experience it. And just talk a little bit. I remember that when you first, like you said, that's so beautiful the way you put it. There was like an epiphany, or it was really, and this is what I find the Mayan information. That's why I'm so keen to encourage people to look into it more. Is, you know, about being able to see ourselves from a much bigger perspective and take ourselves out of the wrongness of us, because this old reality, the 3D reality, is so much about looking at it from the opposite perspective and seeing every limitation about what's wrong with us, you know, and how we're not getting it right, when we actually are immensely aligned and doing it perfectly, but we just need to change our perspective. So what did you do? So, you know, what I always recommend is, or say is, you know, not for it just to be a concept or a thought or an idea. I mean, that's really lovely, because you also have like a mantra that's specific to your star sign, but to also make it physical. So tell us a bit what you did. Remember what you did.
I do. Oh, completely. And I still use those triggers. So what I found fascinating about the Mayan work was the timeline shift, this moving into the time is art as opposed to time is money. And so that creative impulse now has priority over everything else. We are creating in every moment. And so the practical things that I did in order to really bring the Mayan into my daily life was, the first thing is I made a little a band, or actually I wanted to make a band, and I couldn't find the pieces that spoke to me. So I thought, okay, I'd go and buy little beads and I'd string it and everything. So I went to speak at the lady at the bead shop at the counter. And as I looked to the side of the cashier's setup, there was a perfect yellow seed bangle with these beautiful little crystal yellow beads and a seed emblem on it. And so it was ready there for me. It was just waiting, right? So I wore that for the first few days, and I don't wear jewelry. So it was actually a little bit frustrating because it was on my arm all the time, but it kept taking my attention back to, yellow seed. And it was kind of like just really printing. And then I went to the clay cafe and I painted something that was very inspired by the meditation, the first meditation that we did. and just really bringing the 1320 timeline into my daily world. So on my altar, I put that that it was a unicorn, actually, so it was kind of mystical and magical and otherworldly. That I painted in all these yellows, and I painted 1320 on it. So that was on my altar, which was another visual. So it's easier to almost anchor it in when there is something practical. And then the other thing was that I put an alarm on my phone for every day at 13:20, so 20 minutes past 1, the alarm goes off. And then I'm just like, I always check, okay, am I there? Am I switching into the new timeline? And then over the years now, because it's been, I think it's been almost 3 years since we've done my
exactly.
So what I find now is that when 13:20, when that alarm goes off, I listen very, very carefully to what is going on around me. I become very aware. It's like, what is it right here, right now, that I can see from a different perspective? And so I use it very consciously, and it's been
that's so beautiful. I love that. Because, you know, ultimately, absolutely, it's about making our lives better. You know, what's the point of information? There's so much information, and we're getting more and more information. But what is the purpose of it? You know, are we able to use it and apply it and make our lives better? And if we make our lives better, it affects everyone else, and then the world gets better.
Can I quickly show you my blue monkey is coming to say goodbye to me? Yeah, we're actually on a YouTube interview, but this is Ben.
And here's a blue monkey. Hi, blue monkey. Hello, Ben. So Tanya's got a lot of blue monkeys.
I do. Yes, so many blue monkeys.
True coding. Your true coding.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's been such a connection for me with children in the Mayan work as well.
Yeah, just talk a little bit more about that.
So true to yellow seed, right? True to really, and to the base chakra being, prevalent in the seed, is that it's got to do with rooting and anchoring in change, anchoring in new ways of being. And so for me, my place in the world, your children, you know, is such an expression of that. And so bringing them into this work and really understanding the gift that they are, because knowing, for instance, prior to me understanding my Mayan signature, I was very much in the wrongness of me, where I was lacking. And then suddenly this galactic information comes in, and you're aware how you've actually always been doing everything absolutely in keeping with your true essence. And so it's such a beautiful way to look at children as they're whole. They are whole. They are the gift. There's nothing to mold. There's nothing. I mean, of course, we can teach them to be more socially,
Yeah, we can guide them and give them information. Ultimately, I'm not saying a point of wrongness. Yeah,
exactly. But to see the full spectrum of who they are and how they actually complement the various people in their lives. So, for instance, with Benjamin, from the moment he was born, he was such a challenge to me. And then after the Mayan work and doing the creation codes with you, Elizabeth, I recognized that I go out on blue monkey. And then if you think about the seed kind of flowering and exploring, right, everything is then possible. It's the fun, the illusions, the creations, and so forth, right? That is, I think, so beautifully illustrated in what a flower is. It's this absolute expression of life. And so my blue monkey son taught me that challenge isn't a bad thing. Challenge is where the real transformation happens, and where we are, when we can be in the immediacy of the moment with what we coming up against, being against that growth edge, is actually the magic. And
absolutely. And that's the blue monkey.
Oh, yeah. And it is a gift. And somehow when I look at someone, I go, oof, what are they? And they're ultimately blue monkeys, right? So I'm so challenged.
You have a lot of blue monkeys. I love it. And you know, so in your creation codes, just to kind of explain a little bit, is you start off with blue storm, and then you end up in your creations in the energy of being a blue monkey. And the blue monkey is very much about play, illusion, being that magical child, you know, which is beautiful, and seeing the illusion, and that nothing is really so serious and real. It's a very evolved kind of energy, so beautiful. And to be able to see, yeah, that's the other aspect, you know, often of looking at the different energies in the Mayan, is to see how we surround ourselves with different people and what their star signs are, and see how they interact and how they come into play out certain things for us and help us to grow.
And when you also start plotting the people in your life, like my sister is a blue eagle, and how she's always been in wings, right, supporting me.
Yes.
And you, Elizabeth, you, the red earth, and you are my what do you call it, subconscious hidden helper, right? So
yeah.
So the people that I surround myself with, it's just like, that's who you are, of course. And then you know them from a different perspective. And it's just a gift.
Totally. And it's just about perspective, isn't it? And, you know, I was just thinking earlier before our chat, how essential it now is for us to start not, you know, anyone who still sees life from what I call a 3D perspective, life is going to be immensely challenging and difficult, because we cannot see it from that very old limited perspective. We have to see it now from a much more integrated perspective, where we see the bigger picture. If we can't see the bigger picture in anything, life will be very dire and it will look very hopeless. And you know, it's a totally different way of living, which is really not very happy at all. In fact, it's getting more and more difficult. So, you know, that's, for example, with the Mayan, you see it from the bigger perspective, from the seeing everything in relationship to everything else, which for me is where the new generations or the children, blah, blah, you know, they can see it. They're almost born with it, this capacity, which is what the ancient civilizations also knew, is nothing is ever looked at in isolation. You know, we don't just look at ourselves, we also look at everything around us, everyone around us, and we see the relationship between all of it. And then when you see that, it's like suddenly it's a bit like looking at those kaleidoscopes, isn't it? Suddenly you just see the bigger picture, and it's absolutely beautiful and perfect, as you say. So I was going to ask you to speak a little bit about, because I think this is so very important, and thank you for bringing it up, about the Mayan. You know, for anyone who maybe has not really been exposed to this, or maybe even look at it this first time, or hasn't really gone into the Mayan, is this thing of 1320. So can you talk a little bit about that, because you've got such a knowing about it, as opposed to the 1260, so-called 1260 timeline?
So for me, what has been prominently a contribution in the 1320 is this, you know, there's been so much talk in the spiritual communities about the ascension, right? And the sense of a higher, more kind of a higher frequency self. And maybe, you know, what are we guided by? Our higher selves? What is that to you? And I think, Elizabeth, you spoke about the 3D. So what I see is this 1320 seems almost like the space in which we start elevating out of the 3D into the 1320. For me, that's how I've perceived it. We talk about these dimensions and so forth, and you know, and I guess human beings try and conceptualize so that we can, you know, we can anchor into it and then try and apply it. But for me, 1320 just made it so simple. It's just a different something.
Exactly.
That's it. And in that space, there's the letting go. In that space, it's also similar to what you were speaking about earlier, about how everything is cyclical. And for me, it's analogous to the toroidal field, right? So I see myself like even as the seed potentially, or us as a human being, our bodies connected to the earth, connected to the galactic, and then how everything that we collect, say in the blue storm energies, right? Everything that we're collecting out there, we're touching on, we're filtering it through our ourselves, and then it's coming in. And that's where the changes and the transformation happens. And then we go out again and we find it again in the blue storm, and we bring it back in again. And so 1320 gives me that the perspective of seeing it as creation, as my time, my expression, my connection is art. This is how I create in the world. And I create through my being connected to the earth and connected to the galaxies, you know. So I would say that was that. It made it simple. The energy signature of 1320 just somehow recodes the being. And we don't have to go into stories around why is it like this and how is it like that. We don't have to understand anything. It just is a knowing that we suddenly have access to.
Yeah, beautiful. And so the 1320, yeah, as we know, is, you know, that the Mayans call it the real time. Real time is a frequency, and we call the frequency 1320. It's a kind of a mathematical equation, and it holds the different almost cosmic energy of the 13 is the more feminine cosmic energies, so-called feminine, and then the 20 of the would be the more solar or masculine type of cosmic energies, and it's a frequency, as you say. So the 1320 is what the Mayans call real time, you know, when we are actually truly functioning as our true beings, which is this galactic being, the star being, looking at ourselves from a much more universal perspective, not just from standing on the earth thinking we're only human. We are human, but we are everything. And that's the mantra of that is, as you say, time is art. So it's saying we are, time is really given. And that's what I love about the mind, you know, is, I mean, I was an attorney and a lawyer, blah, blah. And, you know, everything, I remember I had timesheets, and every single minute of my day, I recorded what I was doing so that I could charge. I had a certain rate per hour, and so I would charge out my time. You know, so time was literally, time is money, which is the old thing of the 1260, which is the 12 months of the year and the 60 minutes in the day, which our normal calendar, Gregorian calendar, still propagates. And, you know, time was a race. I was trying to do, the more I could do in that time, the more I could charge. And, you know, so time was always, in a way, the enemy. I was always rushing. I was always late, so-called late. You know, and time was, in a way, an enemy. It was something that I had to fight against, find enough time, you know, to be able to fit everything in, to, you know, it was this like literally, it was such an illustration for me of this wheel, you know, this wheel that we have been on as humanity. And the Mayan for me is just my body, a bit like when you spoke about hearing your signature. For me, that was about this 1320. It was like my body just suddenly relaxed, and I got it. The time is my friend. The time is a divine gift. And that this is an opportunity for me to experience this frequency and be in human form and create. And the question only was, what will I create? You know, what is fun for me, not what anyone else thinks I should do or what others think this is good or not. It was what is important for me, you know, and time is there as this beautiful, it facilitates me being a creator. It helps me to be in this space. It creates the space for me to be in a physical body and to create my life. And with that, it was just the sense of ease. You know, lifetime isn't my enemy. I'm safe, you know. Everything is on my side. Everything is there to support me. I'm totally, it's a bit like that yellow seed maybe, of being, you know, everything is in me and I'm safe, you know, it's like I'm secure. I'm in this beautiful seed and I'm here to live, you know, and it's exceptional. And you and I both have a big connection to Frida Kahlo, you know, but I always think of her as this living this mantra of time is art, which is the mantra for the 1320 real time frequency, you know, that she lived her life so openly and so without restraint and truly for herself. And it wasn't about other people really, in a lot of ways. It was just about her. and creating it as an interesting life. And how much do we live, or are we taught that, you know, our lives must be normal, we must be like everyone else, we must fit in. And that is not purpose. You know, the Mayans say, no, we are here to live these colorful lives that are uniquely us. And that's our contribution. And that's the purpose of life, actually, you know. And you look at all the philosophers over millennia, you know, saying, what's the point of life? But actually, it's quite simple for me. It's, I'm here to create. And what am I going to create? And what contribution can that be in that creation to me, to everyone else? You know, so it's always about contribution, but it's firstly about contribution and expression of self. And your galactic signature gives you a very strong indication in this lifetime as to what, you know, almost like what the focus is that we've chosen. So you've chosen the seed. So maybe you can talk a little bit, if that's okay, about maybe the challenges that you, I mean, I'm just thinking, because I obviously know you well, is like even as a child, you know, you chose to, at a very young age, to have that yellow seed challenged by divorce, by, you know, kind of almost like, inverted commas, losing your father. You know, so you've always had, it's, maybe you can reflect a little bit on that, and it can even bring you more awareness now of how, you know, this contrast of safety and then literally breaking open that seed and saying, no, now you've got to, life is different now.
Yeah. So identity, I think identity as a, you know, when we see ourselves in this 3D perspective, or from this 3D perspective, it's we're wearing so many hats, right? It's like first we are somebody's child, then we are somebody's wife, somebody's mother, then we are somebody's employee or employer, and we are a multitude of expressions, and yet it seems to me, in my experience, was like a hall of mirrors. It's like I was so fragmented. I had no sense of myself. I didn't understand, or the word understand maybe is a little outdated too, but I wasn't anchored into anything, and constantly felt I was out there, like out in the storm, right? So I think that is one of the massive challenges of yellow seed is, in my experience, has just been how it's, I can even relate it, Elizabeth, to the spiritual bypassing that I do. Is there's no here and now. There's nothing that I was rooted into. There was nobody that I could call my father. Like, who's my father? And in terms of my experience with my mother, even a really high level of what could maybe be emotional or tactile, like the human body felt neglected, because I didn't have a sense of self. I couldn't. My mother is a brilliant mother, of course she is, and she is exactly who she needs to be for each of her children, and yet I witnessed her physically loving my other siblings, and yet I had no experience of her hugging me, kissing me, tickling me, playing with me. And I always wondered what was wrong with me, and that I couldn't receive that. And it was because there was no sense of me. There was no me. I was always just out out in the ethers. And when I would ask her, like, Mom, what kind of child was I? And she would say, the word she used, you were a divine child. And so even then I was ethereal. I wasn't of this earth. I was out there, and I didn't belong to anything, anyone, not even myself. And so the Mayan work has brought me straight into the sense of, this is who you are. You are a seed, and it's fucking hard. It is hard. It is hard. And to break out of that, and as if the alternative was comfort, it wasn't. You know, we say that Taurians want this sense of comfort, or we have to go against this sense of comfort. But it was never comfortable. It was hard. It was really difficult not to know myself, to have a place to come home to. So I believe a large part of the journey of the yellow seed is to come into self. And
Yeah.
and my environment that I grew up in made it even more challenging for me. And perhaps that's the blue storm. It was immensely difficult. And so just getting this other perspective of the Mayan teachings was like, okay, here I am as an earthly being, fully lacking in pain, in emotional pain. And I feel like half of a person. It's like, or not even a half of a person. I'm an existence, but I don't feel here. I don't feel I'm able to receive. And then with the Mayan work coming in, suddenly there was just wholeness. And then this is 3 years, I've come to know myself in a way that I was just like, wow, I'm so in awe of the fact that I could have survived without this knowledge as long as I did. And then just very quickly, how nurturing it is. Yeah, so I don't know, for the other yellow seeds, it will be very interesting to hear.
Yeah, I know quite a few yellow seeds. I know quite a few yellow seeds, I have to say, as clients and stuff, and also as friends. But what I was going to say as well, part of the yellow seed, is very interesting that the yellow seed is in the base chakra. So it's creating that sense of safety and security. So it's supposed to be very anchored. And the contrast of what you experienced of being way up there, but not being anchored in and rooted in self. And I mean, I'm just thinking of another client that I know who's a yellow seed, and she is an acrobat. And she has got so many signs in air signs, from an astrology point of view. And for her, it was the biggest revelation that she's actually a yellow seed and she's in the base chakra, because she always thought she was out there also in the sky. And once again, I think it's about recognizing it, because it's already there in you, but we're just not able to see it and receive it, because we haven't been able to see it from a bigger perspective.
Yeah.
Also the yellow seed for me is, it's very much, I mean, you're a yoga teacher. You are actually very amazing in you have done so many things. Yeah. And that's also, the yellow seed is very much about also the kundalini, the sexual energy, the life force. So very often I find yellow seeds have got strong connections to yoga, or, stuff that really is body. You are very embodied, actually. But it's, I suppose, it's being to bring it together, or acknowledge it.
And yeah, no, completely. And it would be so awesome to get like 5 or 6 yellow seeds together and have
maybe one day we'll have one, and I'll get everyone on, and then that's a very good idea. And you can all talk about the area. Yeah,
it would be great. Because I wonder whether the kind of being in the ethereal, and then is it then coming into the knowing of the seed and then the embodiment, or do others experience the embodiment and need to grow outwards? Whether it can be both ways with the yellow seed, and does it depend? But for me, it's definitely, I was in the collective, the external. Even if you think of the healing work that I did or do, it's always been, I've been in the collective. And what I've come to know since this Mayan work and the work that I've been doing over the past 3 years is that I've been working in the collective because it's been too painful to work.
The personal.
In the personal. Really. And that has changed very much. And you've introduced now the concept of the divine masculine and feminine energies, and the kundalini, exactly the sexual energy, this life force energy that we work with, which it all connects, right? And it's been massively grounding for me to also be able to conceptualize the energy as masculine and feminine, and what each brings, and how those energies work together.
Combine, So maybe let's talk a little bit about your feminine aspect, which is, because you're a yellow rhythmic seed. So rhythmic is the feminine aspect. So rhythmic, let's talk a little bit about rhythmic and how you experience that, because that's also a very interesting combination with yellow seed.
Yes. Absolutely. In my experience, so not going into, say, the theory of the rhythmic, my experience in life has been that I've moved through extremes to find balance. So incredibly exploratory. Even if we just talk about some of the topics we've touched on now, is that having, say, no sense of self to suddenly having such a grounded sense of self, right? I've had to go to the absolute polarity, moving through again into the other, and then somehow finding the beauty, the balance, and the harmony in the union of the masculine and feminine energies. So that has been my experience, and that might also be very true to the rhythmic nature of the yellow seed. But I'm just looking now at the
So
yeah,
I'm also just looking. So
yeah.
rhythmic, what's interesting for me about rhythmic is that it's also about equality.
Yeah.
So it's about balance, but equality.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah, that's
and
almost
so,
like that Libra aspect, hey, of things being able to be equal. So how does that resonate for you? The equality of
so people that have known me all my life say I'm incredibly diplomatic, and I wouldn't have seen it that way. I wouldn't have defined it that way, but I think it may be speaking to this this equality. And my sense is that I'm feeling all the energies. I'm in the polarities. I'm moving, right, and I'm feeling all of this. And then it seems almost to be the I mean, if you listen to the mantra of yellow seed, it says, I organize in order to target. Balancing awareness, I seal the input of flowering with a rhythmic tone of equality. I'm guided by my own power doubled. And so in terms of the feminine aspect that you speak of here, is that I find like there's this almost like this life force energy, the kundalini, right? The snake moving through all the energies. And then it's about coming into like, okay, well, in this moment, what is the greatest contribution? And sometimes the greatest contribution is to say nothing. But then there'll be this perfect time. And that's when the wisdom moves through you in the immediacy of the moment and the truth of the moment. And that's where the flowering occurs, because it's about organization, it's about targeting, it's about the timing. And the being aware in that moment.
Yeah, so yellow seed also is very good at targeting, because that's one of the key words. So you're very good at kind of, you know, pinpointing something or setting a goal or having, you know, it's almost like setting a target and being able to reach it. And that is very helpful in life, is to be able to do that. So once you set your mind to something, there's actually nothing that can stop you. I mean, as a yellow seed, it's a phenomenal power, you know, that we can all kind of in a way receive or ask to become more aligned to, because everything is in all of us, you know, but in you, it's just very prevalent and very obvious. Yeah.
And Elizabeth, the way that I've really experienced that is like, if we talk about the targeting, it's almost as if we can see it like you can seed an idea. But when there's no expectation on the outcome of it, it's like there's been a beautiful intention that has been seeded, and who knows when it's going to flower, who knows when the environment is going to be optimal in order for that to occur. And so what I'm seeing through the 1320 is that there are beautiful prayers of intention for this world that we create together, and that which I wish to interact with within myself and in the external too. And so there are these beautiful seeds that are planted, and then suddenly they're gifts. It's like walking in a field and you see this beautiful flower and you're just like, wow. And there's a connection to it, right? And this happens with people, with things, with experiences, with food, with whatever it may be. And so what happens in the 1320 space is that suddenly life is so full of gifts, because we're seeding our intentions in every moment.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that, Tanja. I think that's such a beautiful way to end, you know, is to look at the seeding of beautiful intentions and beautiful dreams, you know, for ourselves and for humanity and for the future, because you know, we need to bring that into existence and start to create. And if we don't create and start seeding them, you know, and yellow seed is just such a beautiful opportunity for all of us to plant seeds, to even plant physically a seed, you know, put our hands into the earth, into the soil, like you were saying, into the base chakra, creating security. And that's such a, it comes to mind is this beautiful thing of like we all starting to cultivate, to work with the earth. And as we go in 2023, I really have a sense, because of also many of the planetary alignments, is that, you know, everyone on this planet is going to start to feel far more aligned to the earth, and there's going to be a really accelerated interest in the earth, in working with the earth, you know. And so I love it that as we're going into this new 2023, I was guided to have a chat with you as Yellow Seed. And yeah, what can we, you know, how can we interact and cultivate physical seeds, even in our own gardens, in the pot plant, in whatever. And in ourselves, hey, it's our connection to the earth. So strong.
It is very strong. And if I may just add to that, initially I was very literal in terms of also having such a strong connection to the earth, and literally being involved with, you know, I was involved with transformers,
yes, exactly,
and agricultural, you know, enlightenment in terms of the soil and so forth, and you know, somehow rooting out pesticides and what's not unnatural, what's not natural. And we spoke about biodynamic wines, and so it's been very literal for a while. But what has happened actually in the last half of this year is that I realized that we are harvesting, of course, in every aspect, whether we're going to the supermarket or the doctor or wherever. We are seeding in every moment, and the last 3 months I've actually been in court, in a court environment, representing myself, not knowing what the hell I'm doing, and it's just like, okay, this is where I'm called to be, and trying to be in the truth of the moment,
and sowing seeds
of change, and the change that has occurred has been phenomenal. So it isn't limited, of course, to the earth of agricultural and harvesting, but we are harvesting in our experiences in every moment, and we're changing the world, we're changing our experience by being open to saying, what contribution can I be here, and not having an expectation on the outcome, but to say, you know, so one of my mantras have been like, what energy, space, consciousness, choice, magic, possibility can me and my body be to be the greatest contribution in this moment in court, right? When I didn't know what to say, how to answer the magistrate, I would just mantra, and the world changes around you. And so we constantly
sowing seeds, eh? This is creating in the moment. And in that moment, you are the creator, Tanja, and you are creating your life. And you know, time is art, and it's about living it. And that's what I so appreciate about you is, you know, you have a great understanding. And I'm sure it's also past life. I've always said to you, I see you as a Mayan in many lifetimes. But you know, it's about not just, it is a consciousness, but it's about we've come to express it and to live it in our life, you know, and that is, so you're such an inspiration. And thank you for sharing your amazing wisdom as always, and your beautiful wisdom. And just for the gift of so much love.
Thank you.
And thank you for showing up, and let's do it.
It's been my great pleasure. I feel like the Mayans have saved my life, so
oh, thank you. It's really, I really sense at this time, you know, it's helped me immensely, and it's just always so lovely to share it with others. So thank you, my beautiful, amazing Tanja.
Thank you.
See you again soon.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.